Have you ever felt like modern dating just seems to be men versus women nowadays? Everybody's exhausted, everyone's frustrated, men are blaming women are blaming men, nobody's happy. But here's the truth, men aren't the problem, and women aren't the problem either. The system that we're all stuck in, modernity, that's the problem. In this video, I break down why that happens, what both sides are feeling, and how we as men can get better about bridging the gap, and about what women should know about what men go through so they can bridge the gap. If you're new to the channel, or if you're returning, the answer is the same. I'm Chris Bates, author of The Dating Edge. I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, I'm an author, and I love talking about this because nowadays I hear people complaining all the time, and with due cause. The dating world is tougher than it should be. And I'm here to help you fix it in your own life. This topic is one that I've thought about for a while, and I actually wrote about it in my book, but it came up in one of my live calls that I facilitate with men. Then somebody DM'd me about it the next day, and it's like, okay, I gotta make a video on this. I pulled up the DM because I want to read it to you. It says, there are a lot of women who paint themselves off to be potentially traditional, and they never show any sense of emotional femininity. And then guys get burned out when they slowly but surely experience the bait and switch, where they get taxed to death by endless interrelationship negotiation. So while that might happen, and there's truth to it, there's a ton of nuance that we need to discuss. Let's talk about context, and then we'll talk about it from a man's perspective and a woman's perspective. There's a quote from my book. Men want to lead, but they don't always have the confidence built yet or the means to do so, financially and otherwise. Women want to trust by default, but they can't always afford to. So the whole idea of it's not men versus women, women versus men, it's us versus modernity. The way that modern society is set up, we got toxic foods in our environment, we have toxic media, we have this polarizing political global bullshit going on. So people are stressed out more than ever. They are physically and mentally ill more than ever. We are having a crisis of not only identity, but social belonging and fulfillment and purpose. And on top of that, we are more alone than ever, despite feeling connected, because this virtual connection is not the same as being in person or being in a relationship. Men and women are all experiencing these things, so they're not entering the arena with their best foot forward. They're already wiped out and exhausted and on edge and defensive. And I don't blame anybody, men or women, for feeling that way. But when you take a moment to realize that that's the case, you tend to have a little more grace for everybody that's entering the dating arena. And I say that because it really does feel like a battle sometimes. The good news is, I believe, and maybe I'm overly optimistic, that the pendulum is swinging. We've gone to the extreme about like isolation, what's real anymore, overly manicured things, this kind of like fake virtual connection. And now we're swinging back to value authenticity, truth, in-person connection. The good news is we're swinging back this way. But in order for us to get the pendulum some inertia, and we don't want to overcorrect, right? We want to land in the middle. We as men, I firmly believe, have to lead to change the script of the dating game. And women need to be perceptive and meet us there. And don't get me wrong, it's not that women can't contribute. It's just we as men can't say, well, women need to do this. We gotta take action. That's what being a man is about. So in conclusion, on context, just trust that both sides are doing their best given the cards that they were dealt. Especially when it seems like the cards that were dealt reverses us out of our natural roles, which is very frustrating for men and for women. So let's talk about that. If you intend to be a good man, the best man that you can be, you're already very hard on yourself. You don't need a woman to be hard on you too. What you need is time, especially in the modern world where men are looked at as useless, or the whole I don't need a man idea. We already are struggling with purpose and identity and fulfillment. And things like getting lost in virtual worlds and video games and porn and casual dating, casual sex, those are tempting because it doesn't require a lot of effort and you can still get something out of it. I believe that they're empty, and I think that it's a terrible addiction, a terrible waste of our time. But I understand why people get drawn that way, because it's easier than trying to find the right woman, start a relationship, and do all these things that naturally we've done for thousands, if not millions of years. But again, it's the modern world's fault that that's that way. So from a man's perspective, we're doing our best. And we don't want credit. We don't want to get praise. We just want women to understand that shit's hard and I'm tired and I'm not perfect, but I'm just doing my best. And so we need to persist. Give ourselves grace so that way we can give other people grace, but we're not giving ourselves grace enough of the time. And I think a big way we can do this is by every day pushing the envelope, but also giving time for rest and recovery and for doing things that aren't productive. When we feel baited and switched, it's often when we've been putting a lot of effort into dating or to ourselves or our business or our pursuits or being a good person. We're just hammering. It's like a rhino at a tree stump. We're just hammering this and we're not getting any movement. We don't know if we're making any ground. And then a woman comes along and maybe it's bad timing. Maybe she's had a bad day. Maybe she's also growing and trying and she's exhausted. And then instead of filling in each other's gaps, and that's not a euphemism, we butt heads because we're exhausted. We just want one piece of evidence that I'm heading in the right direction. And they're like, I just want one piece of evidence that all men aren't terrible. And then they go into it tight and then they combat instead of slipping together. Where the men should be non-presumptuous and approaching a new opportunity where a woman comes to him and he's like, you know what? If she's a little bit prickly, if I have to break the ice or maybe pull her walls down a little bit, that's fine. I have energy for that. I have a well of energy and I'm willing to do that to see who she really is because I know that life is tough. We don't do that. We say, oh, she's this way, so I'm out. That, in my opinion, is probably the least masculine thing you can do. You're just assuming that they're a terrible person. You're just assuming that there's something that they dislike about you. Dude, it's got nothing to do with you. This is just the product of modern times. But again, I get it. I get the frustration. I get the lack of tolerance because we're already whittled thin. And there's some really big consequences to that. On the macro scale, men's lack of being able to feel like they can ask for help. The feeling of uselessness and purposelessness. The suicide rates, mental health rates, depression, loneliness. These things really are an epidemic. And this is why things like extreme red pill content or black pill or incels, this is why this mentality and this unfortunate trend of the idea that women aren't worth it, they're not worth the trouble, is happening. And it's terrible. And there's, again, so many things that a man deals with. And all we need from a good woman is acknowledgement that we're going to be harder on ourselves. What we need from women is grace and peace and nourishment and someone that we can fall back on, not to do the work for us, but just a soft pillow to fall on, a place of comfort. And it's really unfortunate. I've had friends who are no longer with us because they were in a really tough place with this stuff and they chose to do the irreversible. And so I have a really, really deep heart for that. I could go more into that, but that's the man's perspective. So let's go into the woman's perspective. Many women start off bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They're not cynical. But as they go through the dating world and they encounter guys who are not honest, not confident, and maybe not financially prepared to take care of them, they realize like, okay, I've given these men patience and grace. It doesn't always turn out in my favor. So I need to take care of myself until I find a guy that can take care of me. This is a totally natural train of thought. However, they become used to this sense of self-sufficiency. And over time, without knowing it, without it being intentional, they have both hands on the wheel and they're gripping very tightly. So when a man does walk into play and she is interested in him, it's very difficult for them to reluctantly take a hand off a wheel and maybe even the second hand. And so this is where the idea of role reversal comes into play, right? The man is building up and he may not feel comfortable having both hands on the wheel and the foot on the gas or the brakes. And then the woman's here, but there's this awkward transition. Luckily for men, as you develop these skills, everything about being more confident, assertive, successful, mature, doing well in your career, mental, physical health, it's all about you taking action, taking the lead in your life. That translates to dating. For women, they have different problems. They're learning the masculine role, and then they have to somehow toggle that off when you come into the picture. That's hard, and you need to have some grace and patience and empathy for that. And I totally get why women are this way. But you just need to know that they're not doing it on purpose, and it has nothing to do with you. So if you can have the patience, some of the best women out there are gonna be the ones that you encourage. You're like, hey, you can take your hand off the wheel. It's okay. And look, some women, they're gonna be in boss babe mode. They're gonna be looking for their power couple partner. And these things are fine. There's beautiful relationships with that. But just have the patience for them to develop a toggle where they can toggle out of that mode and into how you want them to show up in the relationship. And look, it's not masculine versus feminine, right? Men are not 100% masculine all the time, and women are not 100% feminine all the time. There's ebbs and pulls and seasons and balances. The point is that men and women become complementary to one another versus combative. It's us versus the problem of modernity, not us versus each other. So from the woman's perspective, again, there's a lot more we could go into. Just remember, they're dealing with a lot too. It might be different from what men are dealing with, but it's also similar, or it's the other side of the same coin. So have some patience and empathy and grace for that. And to kind of wrap up the women's side of things, if you're a woman listening to this, or maybe you're a guy and you want to send this to a woman because it helps break down what's going on and how you feel about it, good men don't need much from you. That's a crazy thing, they really don't. They just want your patience. They want that feeling of being nurtured. They want you to be happy and playful and whimsical. And they don't need you to be too serious. And they don't need you to have a good job. And they don't need you to be anything other than more of who you are. I'm not saying it's good for people to be stagnant, men or women, but men don't need a woman who puts their career and personal development and all these things ahead of everything else. They need a woman who's growing in the way she wants to grow, being more of herself. I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but that's the best thing. Let's talk more about building this bridge and what the solution is and how we as men can take action, how women can do things to bridge the gap. Remember, everyone is worn down. I believe this is why we're seeing a lot of people who have given up on relationships, have sworn off men, have sworn off women, have sworn off dating, and they've really built this tough hide, this armor, and they're hiding within it, but they don't feel good. And I don't think that that's the solution. Both sides, men and women, need to lead with patience, grace, trust by default, sympathy, and curiosity. Now, I'm not saying you should ignore your intuition. I have more videos on that. I'm going to do more material on that. So if you meet someone and you're feeling like something's off, by all means, trust your intuition. But if someone is being a little prickly and you're like, I don't know if I like this, but I also don't understand why they're like this, that's when you dive deeper. And that's something both men and women can do. For men, we really need to lead from a non-presumptuous place. If you're talking to a woman and dating a woman and you're not willing to put the time in to understand her, you probably shouldn't be dating. You don't want it bad enough. You don't want a relationship bad enough. And if you're here just to date casually and pick up women, this video is not for you. You should have gone a while ago. But if you're here because you want to lead and grow and navigate these kinds of interactions, it's amazing how many really good women are out there who will be so taken aback in the best of ways that you led a discussion early on for clarity and understand what she goes through. Not only does that put you in really good graces in her eyes, but it's such a fun conversation to have. You can just get so animated, you can learn about somebody. And look, if she's not your wife and the mother of your children in the future, that's okay. You're still doing something wonderful for a stranger. It helps you get the repetitions in. You become better equipped for the next woman you talk to. So you know that it's a great investment of time, regardless of how it may or may not turn out. Women, if you're watching this, I really believe that, yes, you don't want to be presumptuous either, but it's almost about tolerance and endurance. Women have an insane amount of perseverance. I mean, whether that's birthing a child or being in a relationship and backing a man who's going through some tough shit. Women are truly so tenacious. And that tenacity needs to be applied in the dating world. When waves upon waves of fatigue, or men who aren't mature or lie or misleading, or the problems that we talked about earlier of modern society, don't let yourself become cynical, because as soon as you get negative and cynical, by default, men are no longer magnetized to you. And that's why you're not getting approached by the men that you want, or you're not in relationships with the kind of man that you want. And I'm not saying the blame is all on you. It's not all on men either, but you can do something about it. I don't believe in the victim mentality. You can choose to behave a certain way that's inviting for the right kind of man. And high caliber men are going to be looking for that aspect. They can sense it. So men, your job is not to fix the whole macro level situation or even the woman. Your job is just to take action and not fall prey to the mindsets that prevent you from leading or that force you to be presumptuous. Women, you don't need to manage men. You don't need to pressure them. You just need to accept the requests from men that you're interested in and give them time to step into that confidence role. And you certainly don't need to fill their role. Just give them an opportunity to fill the role. So a couple key reflections and takeaways to really just crystallize this for yourself as you go forward so it becomes a habit, not just a video you watched and forgot. What patterns do you see in your own dating life, whether you're a man or a woman, that reflect role reversal? Are you directing anger or assumptions at the other gender versus the circumstances of the modern world? Really have this honest conversation with yourself. Do you tend to be too guarded or too prickly when you enter a first date, a new relationship, when you get back into the dating world? Or if you're watching this and you're already in a relationship, have you fallen to that from a place that was more curious and more leadership oriented? I cannot emphasize enough, because you see it in like politics, diet, literally everywhere. It is not one side versus the other. It really never is. That's just a smoke screen. It's just bullshit. It's us versus the problem. And nobody's gonna come in and save us. No one's gonna come in and save you. You gotta do something about it. And I believe that you can. So let's take the lead as men and bridge that gap. If this and topics adjacent to this hit home, great, because my book is almost published, The Dating Edge. I've been working on it for 3 years, and there's a lot more stuff in there just like this. I know the whole cliche thing, like, follow, subscribe. But if you found this helpful, do it. I plan to do a lot more like this. I already have some stuff, but I'm gonna get into doing this a lot more frequently, and I'm super stoked to have these conversations and add value. And I wanna hear your feedback, your challenges, anything that you have in your mind. Shoot me a message, comment. I wanna talk about it. I also have a men's community. So if you're a man watching this and you're like, shit, I love this, where's the nuance? Or I have a situation, I wanna talk to you, Bates, Chris, about this, or other men going through it. I have a community just for that. Leave a comment, I'll send you some info on it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Deuces.